I feel that when I started doing PM, I was so bogged down by making sure that I was doing releases, writing the PRDs, working with designers, engineers, and I think that's still an important part of the job. I'm not diminishing that. But I felt that I missed out on a lot of the business value simply because I didn't understand the concepts. Interesting thing about this one is the visual is so simple. Every product out there has a magic moment, and it's important that that magic moment is protected. So even if you've achieved product market fit, there's no guarantee that you're going to stay within it.
Then if you look at the writing on this post, like I just nailed it with the research. Each and every paragraph and line is like brand new detail.
In terms of comments, because you've got tons over here, how do you deal with them? Like, obviously there are appreciative comments, and then there are like the negative ones. Some of them obviously have interesting points of. So advice number one.
Really quickly, I think a crazy stat is that more than 50% of you listening are not subscribed. If you can subscribe on YouTube, follow on Apple or Spotify podcasts, my commitment to you is that we'll continue to make this content better and better. And now on to today's episode. Hey Aatir.
Hey Aakash, how are you?
Great, it's been so long. What are we going to be doing today?
Today, we're going to break down 3 of each other's LinkedIn posts, which we really love, and we're going to go deep dive into them and figure out what we love about them.
Awesome. So let's get into this journey of the post. I want to start with your latest post on the new trio. All right, so walk us through this. Who is the new trio in product?
Yeah, and I think before we even explore the new trio, I think we need to reference the old trio, and a caveat over here that we're not, or at least I'm not saying that old trio is irrelevant anymore, which was the product manager, the engineer, and the designer. Previously, the question that we used to ask was that, what is the product that we need to build? And is it the right product? Who do we need to build it for? And what's the right strategy around that? But now what we're seeing is with the emergence of AI and now the whole effort of building product and building features is collapsing because of technological advancements. I think it's becoming a lot more important for companies to start working on their go-to-market strategy, their differentiation, their positioning and messaging, along with how they smoothen out their acquisition and retention expansion channels. And I feel that while the product manager, engineering, designer trio still is relevant to get the right product, to build out the right go-to-market strategy and build bridges to right consumers, you need some other stakeholders into the mix. And that's where the product manager, who still owns what the product needs to be, is relevant. But then you also have the product marketer who creates those resonating messages, reaches out to the audiences and makes them, really convinced that this is the product that they need to buy. And then once those have established that covalent bond, then the growth marketer comes in and then just catalyzes the entire ecosystem by making sure the acquisition and retention is supercharged. So I believe that moving forward, SaaS companies will need this trio to scale product market fit and not just build the right product, but also build the right product such that unit economics work out and the businesses essentially thrive. So if you go back to Marty Kagan's, 4 properties for a product, we already talk about, valuable products, and then feasibility, then there's viability, and then there's, desirability, so on and so forth. I feel that the question about feasibility, whether we can build it, is becoming less relevant, although it still needs to be considered because you don't want to throw your resources everywhere. But now the question is a lot more about, if we do build it, will it actually scale, and can we actually crack a profit out of it? And now that we've emerged out of the growth at any cost era, I think this is just going to be the new trio that's going to lead us into the future.
And I think it speaks a little bit to the rise of the product marketing and growth functions, which are a little bit newer, but now that they're picking up in their prevalence, this trio is actually something that can exist.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot more education going around at least, especially the product marketer role, which was kind of like ambiguous at one point. And now more founders and leadership teams are finding value in product marketing because there was always this disconnect between, the product kitchen, which was churning out this product and the features, and how customers were consuming it and understanding what it was. And I actually felt this back even in vFairs as well as other products, that we would push out a number of features, and we would talk to customers later on. And there were a couple of problems that were prevalent. One, they wouldn't know that they even existed. That was a awareness issue. And the second thing was that they didn't really understand the value of that product and in a language that they could resonate with. And that's where we started understanding that product marketing is going to be that bridge, that we may be churning out or coming out with some amazing features, but for customers to really understand it in the context of their use case, you need someone to own that messaging and positioning. And that's why product marketers are just becoming more and more relevant to the conversation. And I think with growth, now that there's a lot more education out there in growth tactics, especially we're going to talk about growth loops in a bit as well, I think that's just becoming a part and parcel of how you're going to scale a business once you've established product market fit. In this trio, I have to throw in a caveat. I feel that the product manager and product marketer role are the prerequisites, and they have to first establish a very strong bond with each other and make sure that they own the launch. But the growth owner is probably not someone that comes in day one. They actually join the equation after some semblance of product market fit has been established. But then they're a really key player in making sure the business scales.
So you wrote about how the common mission here is to achieve sustainable PMF. Is this kind of based on the idea that PMF is always collapsing and you always need to be working to maintain it?
Yeah. The analogy that I used to give for PMF was that if you have a blow dryer and then you put a ping pong ball on top of it, and then you still have to just maintain it. So even the slightest external force on the ping pong will dislodge it from that airstream. And that's what PMF is. Like, we've already seen it since 2021, that so many market dynamics change and shift. AI just came into the foray, and it kind of like displaced so many different startups and products, and they had to pivot. The pandemic was another factor, but these are more extreme cases. Even at a niche level, there are market dynamics that keep on changing. So even if you've achieved product market fit, there's no guarantee that you're going to stay within it. So this is really important, that the previous trio was really focused on building the right product. Here, the question is that, okay, even if we have the desirable product at hand, how do we make sure that we remain cost efficient, we reach the right audiences, we keep on growing, and then we don't lose on because customers have churned, and we keep on that retention rate that's desirable for our stakeholders. So that's where this trio sort of specializes, and that's the value that they're going to bring.
So what are these areas of shared understanding?
Yeah, just like any trio, you need to have all those three stakeholders to sort of converge and agree on a charter of things that are important for the company. Because if you don't have that alignment, then all these three stakeholders might be working in different directions and they're rowing in different directions. So the first part, which is obvious, is the vision. And that needs to be one vision of what they sort of see where the product is going to be. What is that one problem that they really want to solve for the customer? And how do they want to change the ecosystem? Who's the villain in the equation? And they identify that this is the status quo that they're going to be challenging. Then there can be a number of different pain points within that particular domain. And all the three stakeholders need to agree, like, how do we prioritize those problems? What is the most important problem in that stack? And what are the first two that we're going to be targeting, and which ones are going to be deprioritized? Then there's a concept called magic moment. And I feel that every product has one or two aha moments that surpass every other aha moment that they have to offer. So, when you think about booking.com, the aha moment is when you have that booking and when you arrive at that hotel and when you check in, and, it actually serves your value. When it comes for Uber, it's when the car arrives and you get in and you're at the place you want to be. And so on and so forth. Every product out there has a magic moment, and it's important that that magic moment is protected. So you don't want the growth marketer to start coming up with experiments where the magic moment doesn't even appear in that growth flow. The product marketer needs to know that this is something that needs to be prevalent in all the positioning statements or the messaging. And the product manager needs to make sure that this magic moment is protected and it doesn't lose its permanence or its essence. And then that ties into the metrics that matter. All three need to know what's the one metric that really the customers and the product really cares about. Apart from revenue, revenue is kind of like everything and profitability. But then you also have some product metrics and North Star metrics that you would want to optimize for. And then finally, the playing field where you're up against and adoption barriers, like what are the typical objections that customers have? And if you know and understand that these are the objections that you want to minimize to create more growth, all three can work together to achieve that.
And then you describe some of the individual goals. How would you summarize those?
Yeah. So like if I was to create little mantras for each one of them. So product manager is still doing what they do with the other trio, which is building the right product for the right market. And the product marketer is articulating that value and architecting that GTM strategy so that they reach the right audiences, and that too in a cost-efficient manner. And then once those two are operating, the growth marketer, the growth owner comes in and they accelerate that entire ecosystem, making sure acceleration of acquisition and retention expansion happens organically. Now that could happen by injecting growth loops. That could happen by doing a lot of experiments in the acquisition or retention aspects. But all those three have their individual goals, but they all come together to achieve a common purpose. So yeah, those are the mantras that they have.
This episode is brought to you by WorkOS. If you're building a SaaS app, at some point your customers will start asking for enterprise features like SAML authentication and SCIM provisioning. That's where WorkOS comes in, making it fast and painless to add enterprise features to your app. Their APIs are easy to understand so that you can ship quickly and get back to building other features. Today, hundreds of companies are already powered by WorkOS, including ones you probably know like Vercel, Webflow, and Loom. WorkOS also recently acquired Warrant, the fine-grained authorization service. Warrant's product is based on a groundbreaking authorization system called Zanzibar, which was originally designed for Google to power Google Docs and YouTube. This enables fast authorization checks at enormous scale while maintaining a flexible model that can be adapted to even the most complex use cases. If you're currently looking to build role-based access control or other enterprise features like single sign-on, SCIM, or user management, you should consider WorkOS. It's a drop-in replacement for Auth0 and supports up to 1 million monthly active users for free. Check it out at workos.com/Aakash to learn more. That's workos.com/Aakash. Today's episode is brought to you by Amplitude. Building great digital products is hard. You know that better than anyone. Getting teams aligned, measuring what matters, and scaling your product strategy isn't easy. But what if you had a clear framework to guide your next steps? That's exactly what Amplitude built. They studied the best product teams to understand what really drives impact and turn those insights into the Digital Experience Maturity Assessment. In 2 minutes, you'll be able to see where your team stands and what you can improve to build better products faster. Click the link in the caption to take the free assessment and get a clear path to product growth.
And so they have then their own circles of influence where different owners are responsible for interfacing with different teams.
Yeah, exactly. One thing that I truly believe is that when you have a trio or a dual role, you want to have as much coverage as possible in terms of influence, because if you have all the bases covered, you can really drive a product or a business forward. And what I like about this particular trio is that their union of influence is nearly the entire company. So when it comes to a product manager, they're working with designers, engineers, and research. Product marketers are working with the sales side or the revenue-facing side. And then growth marketers are working a lot more with internal stakeholders and data and analytics. And then all of those three sort of combined create a central influence on the executive leadership. So I like the fact that there's universal coverage in terms of influence.
I like how you've laid it out there. So then you detail this with the activities, and the PMs are getting discovery, prototyping, prioritization, roadmap, feedback analysis. That's what everyone knows about. What are growth and PMM owning?
Yeah, so PMM, it will be owning positioning, like how do you position your product in face of competition? How do you differentiate yourself? The messaging that you're going to be using, the actual words for that, the launches, which is extremely important. How do you introduce a product or feature into the market? Not only just for new prospects, but even your existing customers. As I mentioned, one of the problems that we had was that we kept on expanding our product, but even our existing customers weren't aware about the new features that would be launched and how they were contextualized for their use case. And then apart from that, it's go-to-market strategy. What kind of brand awareness channels or cost-effective acquisition channels are you going to exploit? So when I think about products like Hockey Stack, right? You may not know what they're doing specifically in terms of product, but I see them everywhere. I'm a marketing leader. I see them everywhere on LinkedIn, on their ABM campaigns. I see them on Reddit. People are talking about them. And they've done that not by throwing a fortune at paid media, but making sure that they are very, very strategic about the audiences they want to reach. If you think about RB2B or SparkToro, the two SaaS platforms, they're great innovations in of itself, but if you think about how they did for founder-led brand, that's a product marketing activity for me, and the way they've made a choice of targeting the right persona. And when it comes to growth, it's making sure that looking at the journey, that acquisition journey that customers are having into the product, and then over time reminding them of the value that the product is providing through retention hooks, and bringing them back into the product and making sure that they keep on seeing that value. And then growth loops, right? So how can you make a user sort of bring another user in by doing some action? When you look at Figma, a user is not only just creating a Figma file, but they're also sharing that out. Now that could be within the organization or externally, and that just introduces another user into the ecosystem. LinkedIn is the same thing. You create a post, somebody shares it. That post might travel into a WhatsApp or a Telegram thread. Somebody might sign up for LinkedIn just because of looking at that post and then interacting with it. And then conducting A/B tests. Now, obviously, everything isn't set in stone, so you have to test a lot to make sure you understand what the audience behavior is and you can optimize for that. So those are some sampling of activities. I haven't covered all of them, but it should give you a good idea how they work together.
And then throughout this post, you go through more on the PMM Alliance, the PMM Growth Alliance, unpacking these alliances.
Yeah.
When you came up with this post, what really motivated you to talk about this new trio?
Yeah. So I think we had been talking so much about the old trio, and the challenge that I was facing was that I felt that product management and product marketing typically in many organizations are siloed. And product marketing is seen as a marketing function that sits under them. And there's a sort of like a handoff process. The product will create the product, and then they'll just hand it off to product marketing and go ahead and do your email marketing campaigns and whatever. And the communication between them, as well as the communication with growth, is very limited. It's almost as if it's like APIs just handing off parameters to each other. Like, that's not the way it should be. And I first felt this within vFairs, and I said that, we need to break this model. Product managers and product marketers should be talking to each other from the start of the development cycle, and they should be exchanging notes, whether that's for discovery or voice of customer. They should be talking about market feedback loops a lot more, so that product is more informed about what to build, and product marketers are more informed about what the product capabilities and limitations are. And that's where I thought that, we talk about different alliances, but this one seems to be a lot more prevalent. And with the advent of AI, I think it's just going to become even more evident that this is required and needed. And as you mentioned, product marketers are becoming, there's a lot more awareness about how product marketing helps. And there's a lot better distinction between traditional marketing and product marketing. I think it's just apt to introduce this concept. I don't think there are many companies who have adopted this, although you could say that, they haven't really formalized the trio as such, but they do have success stories which are built around product growth and product marketing coming and doing their bit to scale the company.
And so have you guys taken up this trio at vFairs?
Yeah, the PMM very much so, and growth owners. So in our case, marketing has growth marketers. That's the department that we own. And they're all now sort of talking with each other. We have something called a cross-channel huddle, where a lot of these people come together and they exchange notes. And in vFairs, we've got like different pods. We have about 8 pods, which are owned by product managers. Every product marketer, maybe they're talking 1 or 2 pods, have to talk to each other bi-weekly basis or weekly basis to exchange notes. And the growth marketer is always looped in to sort of see how they can assist. Yeah.
All right. So I want to pick up 2 threads from what we've previewed with the new trio with your next 2 posts. First, I want to talk about growth loops, which you pinpointed as a selected activity for growth owners. And then I want to talk about languages of product management, which is all around this collaboration that people need to do.
Absolutely. Yep.
So this is your post, 13 examples of growth loops to accelerate user acquisition. Let's start with this one, the invite-based loop. What's going on here?
So the invite-based loop is probably the most common traditional growth loop out there, which is you sign up for a service and that service then says that, hey, why don't you invite somebody else who might find this service useful? You send out a bunch of invites, they also sign up and the loop continues. I think the earliest exponent of this particular model was Gmail, right? When they gave out like the 5, 6 free invites, and then people sort of took that as a status symbol and they sent it out to their friends. And that was the initial fuel with which Gmail grew. And LinkedIn did the same thing over here with the invitation model. Now, what this does is that this kind of very quickly catalyzes the network effects, because the more people that you know join the network, the more valuable it becomes and the more motivation you have to invite other people as well. And many other products have done the same thing. WhatsApp is a great example where, it was a free messaging app, it was cross-platform, and they kept on, pushing people to invite other people because, once your entire address book is on the app itself, then you don't need to spend any money on SMS or text messages. So it's a classic one, but in this case, it's really important that the product or the app is compelling enough for that invite to happen. Because there's no incentive involved over here.
Yeah, I think the WhatsApp one is insanely good. And one of the coolest things about WhatsApp that people probably don't realize, but is built under the hood, is your identity is your phone number there. And so you kind of have this unique identity where you can even look people up. So I love that WhatsApp example. What's the next, or actually you have more details on this. Let's skip that. What's the next type of loop?
Yeah, the user-generated content loop is one of my favorite ones. So Quora back in 2010 and 2011 really exploited this. So a user signs up for a service, and now in Quora, which is a question and answer site, you answer a question, and then essentially once a number of answers have been dropped on a question, Quora starts putting that up with their SEO magic and starts ranking on Google. People, when they search for a question or related query, they end up on that answer and they discover Quora essentially. Now they could potentially want to interact with that, or maybe add their own answer, or maybe ask another question and they sign up for the service and the loop continues. So this is like typical user-generated content fueling your acquisition, fueling your growth, and it sort of leverages Google for discovery.
And they're still somehow sticking around because of it.
Yeah, 100%. Like I think they're still in the top 1,000 or 2,000 websites out there simply because of SEO. They've done a great job on that front. And that also distinguishes them apart from the fact that they did a better moderation from Yahoo Answers. I think they just ranked a lot better on Google. And now like there was a point where it was just either Stack Overflow or Quora results. Now it's Reddit has really joined the foray, and Reddit is really dominant in that front. And I think that's another example of a user-generated content loop. Reddit has been incentivizing creators to write content over there, and it ranks really well, especially after the deal between Google and Reddit since I think 2024.
And then the next one is reputation content loop.
Yeah. Exactly. And this kind of also falls, I think Google Businesses also exploits this as well. So Booking.com is a great example. And the idea behind this is that you use your reputation to generate a lot more users. So somebody signs up for Booking.com, they book a hotel or an apartment, they have a great experience, and Booking.com asks them to leave a review. And now what that particular review page becomes indexable in Google. And obviously, one of the first things that tourists do is they want to check reviews of the places they want to stay in. So if they want to look at the Marriott or the Hilton hotel, they'll probably put it up, or maybe reviews of places to stay in Houston or whatever wherever they're visiting. Booking.com will inevitably show up, and they'll go through that. They'll probably then sign up and book through the platform itself, and the loop keeps on continuing. So this is a great way for businesses to sort of establish repetition, and based on that repetition that's discoverable on Google, they generate a lot more users for the platform, and the loop continues.
So we have two examples based on really pointing in Google. Then we have the expert-driven loop.
Yeah, this one I think is so much more prevalent now. So this is all about, there's a platform out there, and in this example I've given Clay, but I think you would also relate to the fact that this is now seen a lot for N8N as well, and many other these other AI apps, where people pick up a tool and they claim some expertise on it. So Clay is a great example, and they come up with Clay tables and templates and whatnot. And, the typical LinkedIn post where they say that, I generated $50,000 in revenue, and, I got like 100,000 leads in 10 minutes. And if you're, like and comment to get the free playbook, I would never do that. I'm not that generous. But anyway, they did it. And people put, videos up on how they built that. And that just creates a lot more interest into the product. And then people start picking it up. Lovable is a great example. People are now on YouTube as well as LinkedIn, putting up tutorials of how they can build up great apps. Now, these are experts who have already mastered that. And I can tell you so many people are picking up these tools simply because of that expertise and that walkthrough of what the platform can achieve for them. And now you can see this, left, right, and center on LinkedIn.
And then personalized insights.
Yeah. Yeah, this one is a really interesting one. Everybody knows about Spotify Wrapped. At the end of the year, you're going to see everybody, sharing their Wrapped statistics and the songs that they've listened to, and the summary of the greatest artists that they've been following, so on and so forth. So Spotify, I think this was a great growth loop tactic. What they just did was once somebody signs up and they've been using the service for a year, they sort of just consolidate all those insights in one place, and then they give a shareable summary report off that. And that's the keyword is really important. They wanted it to be shared. It's not just like to inform as a user about what they've listened to and the habits that they've developed, but they made it into a shareable format, which then can be shared onto X or LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever. Even in WhatsApp groups, I've seen them being dropped. And then people wanted to generate something off their own. So they would go back to, existing users would go back and generate their wrap, but then people would also learn about Spotify and sort of say that, next year I'm going to do the same thing. And they would sign up. So personalized insights suddenly became a acquisition channel. Who knew that could happen as well?
And what I love about Spotify's example is you see the big creators doing it. In our space, Lenny Rachitsky posted his Spotify Wrapped for how many of his listeners he landed on their Spotify Wrapped. And that encouraged all their listeners to say, well, if cool guy Lenny is posting about it, maybe I should post about it too. So you kind of seed all these famous people who are already creating podcasts to talk about it. And then the less famous people who follow what those people do are considering doing it too.
Absolutely. It's a trendsetter, right? So you see other people doing it, and then you might have some interesting insight in your Wrapped summary. So you also just want to put it out and see if you're going to get the same kind of love that other people are.
Then you have referral incentives.
Yeah, referral incentive is growth loop 101. This is the most basic, loop that exists out there. And Dropbox was the first one that introduced this, which is, when somebody signs up, they would say that if you refer someone, we're going to give you 5 or 10 GB free. And that was just the
I actually stole that from PayPal, who did that even before Dropbox. But yes, the referral program, such a good program.
Referral program was, I think Hotjar did this really well as well, where they signed up people and then they said that we're going to give you like a discount voucher or whatever, and then people were incentivized to sign up, and then the loop continued. So Dropbox and PayPal, as you mentioned, popularized this, but this is the most basic one that people get introduced to. But I think that it needs to be carefully used, and people need to really feel that the product is valuable for them to expose their entire contact list and send this out to like 500 of their friends. They should really truly believe that this is really out there. In fact, a funny story around this, although it wasn't a referral incentive, it was like just a pure sharing loop. I signed up for a telecom app once, and I basically purchased a data package. And the growth loop was that after you purchase a data package, it says that, why don't you share the fact that you just purchased this on LinkedIn or Facebook? And I was like, why would I do that? Like that, there's no reason for me to share that I just purchased 2 GB of internet data from this telecom operator. So that's an example of growth loops done really poorly, where there is literally no motivation for the user to do so because they don't really see that value, or they don't want to bother their network with something that's mundane.
Then there's the multi-party goal loop.
Yeah, this one is one of my favorites as well. In fact, apart from Splitwise, I think Doodle does this really well as well, where they have multi-party calendar sharing. So the idea over here is that you start off with, you sign up for a Splitwise, you go to a lunch or a party, and you pick up the bill for your friends, but then they have to pay you back. So you add them into the app. And now that's a clever and smart move, because it's not just you just sending through a PayPal to their accounts. They actually get added to the Splitwise account. They can see how the bill was split. And then every party or every member of that group gets a notification about how much they owe. They have to sign up for Splitwise and then offer that amount back.
Hey, let me take a quick break to talk about something that's completely changed my product management workflow, Linear. As a PM, I was drowning in tools, one for planning, another for issue tracking, roadmaps and sheets, and jumping between Slack, Intercom, and app reviews just to piece together customer feedback. Sound familiar? I was spending more time keeping systems in sync than actually building product. Every time development kicked off, my carefully crafted plans would immediately need updating. I was the human API between all our teams, constantly chasing updates and translating between tools. That's why I love Linear. I can capture customer feedback, shape product ideas collaboratively, quarterback cross-functional teams, and monitor development progress in one place. It cuts through the maze of disconnected systems that were complicating my life. Product teams at OpenAI, Vercel, Brex, and Cash App all use Linear. If you're tired of spending your days keeping different tools and teams in sync, check out Linear at linear.app/partners/AAKASH. That's linear.app/partners/Aakash.
And then some of the people just get introduced to the app itself, and they love it because they say, oh, this is a great, I can use this for other occasions as well. So this is a classic example where multiple people have to complete a goal. And if any one of them are missing, then, it doesn't really get achieved. And this is just a natural user acquisition, cog machine, I guess. And Doodle is another one that does this really well. And one of my favorites.
There's so many of these. Achievement-driven loop?
Yeah, I came up with that. So I'm sure that you've heard of Wordle. This is back in the pandemic era where everybody was sharing. They didn't have anything else to do. So they would go on Wordle, they would complete their Wordle task, and then they would show off like how many attempts it took them to solve the puzzle for the day. And I think that's the acquisition fuel that Wordle used, because otherwise it's just a game. But since it became a competition, everybody wanted to show off their achievements, and they kept on pushing it on X and LinkedIn. People would pick it up, and then they would try to do it one up, or try to one up the other person, and then they would respond back with a better scorecard. So games and arcade games specifically back in the 90s kind of like introduced this concept where there was like this leaderboard of, and that would incentivize more people to play because they would want to break the record. But now with the advent of internet technology, Wordle kind of just made it into an achievement status symbol, and that just really blew up that acquisition for it.
So clearly these can work across B2B and B2C. You have the product plug loop, the physical evidence loop, the verification driven loop, the word of mouth loop, UGC sharing loop, marketplace hook growth loop.
Yeah.
What inspired you to catalog and create this taxonomy of all of these different growth loops?
Yeah. So when I started learning about growth loops back in the day, it was, I think, 2018, 2019, the prime article behind this was Reforge. If you've looked at the Reforge classic article around this, and they had these growth loops, and they discussed about the referral incentive one, they discussed about the UGC one, specifically LinkedIn and Quora and whatnot. And I really liked that article, and I felt that more people need to know about it. One thing that I felt was missing was actual screenshots of those specific trigger points. And I also thought that the growth loop concept had a lot more coverage. So even like the one that you currently saw, which is physical evidence growth loop, that was one from Gojek. And I got that idea from a Lenny Rachitsky podcast that he had with the Gojek CEO or founder, where they said that the fact that the riders used to wear their uniforms was actually a great brand awareness technique, and it kind of just catalyzed their growth. So I just wanted to sort of catalog all the other different variants that the Reforge article didn't really capture, but I also wanted to inject the screenshots so that people could also understand where these actions or hooks were taking place. And that was primarily, I was journaling it for myself, and then I plan to share it with the world.
Very cool. And then I want to go to our collab post that we did together, 6 languages of product management. Wrote this years and years ago. So it's on my old blog, aakashg.com, not even on my Substack. The first one is hilarious, corporate-ish. What is that, and how do you speak it?
So yeah, like the backstory behind this is, if I may, like I joined a company called Bait.com back in 2011. And I still remember I attended one of the executive leadership meetings, and somebody said to the effect that, revenue is this much, and, we've only generated this much cash. And in my mind, like I was new to the company, I was like, how is revenue and cash different? Like, what is the difference between that? Both of them are the same thing, right? So, and somebody then explained the difference, that revenue is really what you sign in the signed contracts that you have, and then cashing is the money in the bank. And when they explained that to me, it's like, oh, okay, now I understand. And this kept on going on and on. Like they would come up with really weird jargon and abbreviations. Like somebody said, the CAC is down. The CAC is, I was like, what is down? Like, what's CAC? And then I figured out it's cost of acquisition. And that's where I decided that, as a product manager, I need to know a lot of these terms. It's not enough for me to just go through life and not be able to converse with all these stakeholders that I need to influence. So corporate-ish was, obviously when you're talking to executive management, they don't care too much about roadmaps and prioritization and all the other stuff that you're doing in Jira. They care about, what's the ARPU like? What's the revenue like? What's caching like? What's churn like? So on and so forth. And if you don't know those terms and you can't converse intelligently around them, it becomes a bit hard to survive in companies, especially when it's when there's a sales-driven culture. That's where you really need to speak that language. So corporate-ish was invented based on that. And a lot of the languages that you see and the words that came out, I just sort of combined the department with, a popular language out there, whether it was Hindi, whether it was Spanish, Italian, so on and so forth. And that was one of the probably the interesting ways of expressing the post, which actually gave it a bit more wings to garner that much reaction.
Yeah. If the next one is Hindi plus marketing, Market Hindi,
yeah. Marketing is another one. Like as a product manager, you have to figure out like, they talk about conversion rates. They're talking about landing pages. They're talking about product launches. And we have, the CPC for this campaign is going to be really high. And you're like clueless if you don't know what they're talking about. So And especially when the first time that I was introduced to a marketer, they said that, how many SQLs do you plan to achieve from this campaign? I was like, SQLs? Like, I don't write SQL query. And they're like, no, sales qualified leads. And I'm like, oh my God, I was so embarrassed. And that's when I realized that I need to develop some marketing to really converse with these guys. So yeah, this was really important as a product marketer. Whenever you're trying to, push out a release, you need to know what your marketing peeps really care about, to be able to influence them.
So what languages have we put together here? Persian and sales? Salesian?
Yeah, Persian and sales. Yes, exactly. I think, maybe it's, I think it is Persian. I wrote it a long time back. We did this really, I think 3 years back. So I don't remember every one of them. But yeah, Salesian was another thing. Like, I don't know if you've had this experience. Like, half of my PM job back a decade ago was to just support sales staff in pre-sales meetings. And, it was always about, hey, ICPs and discovery calls and qualification and stack coverage and God knows what. So it was just inevitable for us to really learn that language and be conversant with sales fields.
Then you have designees, Chinese and design. Then you have Telugu. I like that. Telugu and tech,
Yeah.
I guess, for engineers.
Yeah.
And I think we could probably come up with some more if we wanted. Analytian. What overall, when you wrote this post, why do you think it caught so much fire, and what encouraged you to even do a collab after?
I think when I started writing the post, even before I did it, I think I had the punchline in my head, which was PMs need to be multilingual. And I think you understand that's on LinkedIn. There's this concept called emotional displacement. And what that means is that if your hook line is going to emotionally displace people either positively or negatively, there's a higher chance of virality for that post. So I knew that once I say that PMs need to be multilingual, it's probably going to be misunderstood. And people will be like, that doesn't make sense. Why? Like, I'm not bilingual, or I know only one language. And that would then, once it would dawn upon them, then they would say, yeah, that makes sense. So a couple of things that really clicked was that till that point, PMs were talked about in isolation. Product management was all about PMs, prioritization, Jira, processes, workflows, project management, so on and so forth, analytics and whatnot. And till that point, I think there was a little conversation around how PMs are really, conversing with the stakeholders around them, and how this is such a cross-functional role. And I think that part, married with the fact that I had these funny names for the languages, I think both of those things contributed to uptake for this one, and people appreciate it. And then, of course, when we partnered together to expand on this concept, and we wrote a lot more about the terms that are required and whatnot, I think it just became a lot more educational. So it graduated from just a fun concept to something that is actually grounded in reality, and people need to pick it up. And I know that people who read the post that you had on your Substack or your blog, they came back and appreciated that because it was served as a glossary for them to kickstart their PM careers.
All right. So now we're going to turn the tables and look at some of my posts. What are we going to look at?
All right. Sounds good. Let me share my screen, and we're going to go through some of these. And if I may, I'd love to sort of first start with understanding what your content process really looks like. Because when I started following you, and the first couple posts that I really saw blow up were, I think, the ones around Stripe or Coinbase, and you used to write these long deep dives, and they were so intense that as a content creator, I felt embarrassed. I was like, I'm writing these 1,300 character posts and I'm trying to influence people. This guy is cracking down on so much depth. And I was like, I can never do that. It was so beyond my capabilities. But I'd love to hear what your process is and how you've evolved over time, because obviously your content has evolved.
Oh, yeah. So the deep dives, company deep dives, that is how I grew up on LinkedIn. I think I like mastered everything about the company deep dive down to like figuring out at the time link posts were a lot bigger in the feed actually than text posts.
Yeah.
Link posts were the biggest post type in the feed. They were killer. You would drive tons and tons of traffic. So it would create these really, really good horizontal images to display in the link post. And then, yeah, those link posts would be supported by 6,000 to 10,000 word articles. At the time, Packy McCormick was blowing up and he was doing some company deep dives. So I did company deep dives from a product angle. And that was like how I grew up. But as my content evolved, as I launched my Substack, and then as I realized, okay, with Substack, first I want to acquire free subscribers. So then I actually started shifting a lot more to the 1,300 characters that you were doing, which was like those daily LinkedIn posts and Twitter threads. And then as I went paid on my Substack and created a paid newsletter, then I realized I basically needed each post to have two parts, a free component and a paid component. And I also started experimenting with like, what is the type of content people want paid? Company deep dives, there's so many of them that are out there for free. And so they're not as much of like a paid asset. But what is paid? Things that people pay for are like very actionable career tips, very exclusive market research, or things that will help them in their career, like negotiate or get a job. And so now my content has really shifted to that. So it's kind of like, the incentives determine how you make the content.
Yeah, makes sense. Absolutely. No, those were amazing. Like, I think that set a new standard. And, but like, as your content has evolved, like I've learned a lot myself from your writing, and it's really influenced me as well. So let's get into it. Like I'd like to first break down the first one. In fact, this one, around 5 lessons from Netflix's decline. This was written about a couple of years ago, blew up on LinkedIn a lot. And I remember seeing this and everybody was talking about it. They had like lots of comments. But what was the thought process behind this, and how did you pick up the 5 points? And why do you think it did so well?
Yeah, so this was back when Twitter still worked for creators. So what I used to do back then was I used to create Twitter threads every day. And so the hook here, what worked on Twitter was typically like a really good chart. And so this chart was released by somebody. And so I found this chart and I said, okay, this is the seedling of a great post. We're going to start with this chart. And then I said, hey, like, what are the questions I myself have about this chart? Like, oh, the red line was looking so good. What caused this decline? Okay, and it's a 67% decline. Gosh, that's like one of the biggest news stories out there. And I don't think anybody's really broken it down. And so then I wanted to research it. And at the time, basically, I used to write my threads where I'd have like 2 tweets per point. And because you had 240 characters, as a result, I would typically write a lot of 5-point threads because that total would then be transferable to LinkedIn. So that's how the 5 points came about. I'd have 2 tweets per thread. And I think the research, basically, I literally Googled it. Like, who is Netflix losing to? I just did like 30 minutes of research. I wrote this post on my phone in the Typefully app with lots of line breaks between each. And then that was what worked on Twitter. And then I pasted that into LinkedIn and I just removed a lot of the line breaks and turned it into paragraphs. And so that was this post.
Yeah. And it's like a couple of questions that I'm curious about. Is that people have different schools of thought when it comes to content creation. Some people say you should write about things that you already know, and some others say that you should do the research and really spend time to give something which is more consolidated, which is more informed. I believe that you're on the latter school of thought, where you do a lot more due diligence before you write and push that out, and you consolidate a number of thoughts together and mash them. Is that analysis correct?
Well, you need to do one or the other. You either need to speak from your experience or do a lot of research. I will never do one post that are neither of those, but I also find that like having a healthy mix of leaning on my personal brand or personal experience, people kind of want that and expect that.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of comments, because you've got tons over here, how do you deal with them? Like, obviously there are appreciative comments, and then there are like the negative ones. Some of them obviously have interesting points of view, and some of them are just haters. So how do you deal with them?
Yeah, I think like if you comment within the first hour, I will read it and respond. And that's because the algorithm tends to like it. After that, I pretty much lose track of the comments because I live on a content treadmill, have the next post to create. So very often, if you comment after that, I'll just totally miss your comment. And in terms of negative comments, I think I love it. Like that's, signal from the universe that there's something you can improve for the next post. And positive comments are great too. I wish I still got comments like this post. I feel like that was a different era of LinkedIn when you could post and get a lot more engagement.
Yeah, absolutely. And in my case, I think I have a similar kind of strategy. Like sometimes, obviously, you get hate comments, and sometimes you learn from them. To be honest, like I'm not perfect, but I remember there was one post which was kind of funny. Like I wrote about ClickUp, and I basically talked about like how they became into this $150 billion valuation juggernaut. And Jason Fried joined the chat, and he was kind of pissed. He said that, okay, that's not on, like, they're not profitable. And I was about to respond, but then I waited because Zeb Evans of ClickUp joined the chat, and then he responded that, okay, we are profitable. And then they started juking it out. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to exit stage left. I didn't have to get into this fight because I'm getting the engagement of my life. So sometimes, you have to lose the battle and just be happy with what's happening. So I'd be really happy with a 400 plus comment streak. Doesn't matter whether it's or not.
You only get negative comments when you go super viral, right? And so
Absolutely.
if you go super viral, then it's a good thing. And then also you get the benefit of getting some feedback on your work.
Yeah, true. Absolutely. Let's go to the next one. So this one is super interesting to me because the visual on this is so simple. So I just wanted to hash out this one, which is your roadmap is not a product strategy. And the interesting thing about this one is the visual is so simple. There is literally no, massive design element over here, but it is striking. And obviously when you view it on mobile, it's just amazing. But I'd love to sort of understand the backstory behind this and how you came up with this simplification. And, what do you think is still relevant? What do you think is probably not as relevant?
Yeah, so this post, Shreyas Doshi has a point of view on like different questions and what they align to. And I basically disagree. And so this is going back to like the Twitter thread days. This was written as a Twitter thread without a picture, actually. And it was just written to like talk about that topic, like why, what, who, when, what, how I perceived it as a practicing. At the time I was leading, I believe, product growth at a firm, right? And so how we thought about it at a firm and how I practice it. That's what I kind of wrote and explained in this post. And then taking it over to LinkedIn, at the time, image posts were doing really well for me. So this is past the era of link posts now. We're into image post era. And so I wanted to come up with a visual for this post, but I was actually just writing this post out of pocket on my phone in an hour and a half while my son was sleeping. And so I wanted to create a quick visual. So I just wrote this quick visual in Google Docs, took a screenshot of it, and the rest is history.
Yeah. And you've gotten a lot of love. Even I see Powell getting there. He's really appreciating your work, and many of the other known people in the PM community really chimed in and sort of plus one this. It's great. Yeah. Perfect.
You just need to get inspired by a really good idea of somebody else's and then kind of make your own flavor of it, I think.
Sounds good. Let's move on to, which is, let me just do that. Arguably your most popular, and I just want to put that into quants, 134,000 reactions, 3,000 comments. That is like an awful amount of reactions and engagement. I've never seen any post get that much. let alone, I think that's probably the amount of reactions that I've received in 5 years on being on LinkedIn. So this is insane. And it's not even like classic product. It's sort of like a story that you had. And again, this goes back to your storytelling skills. But obviously this was from an era when LinkedIn was on a very different algo path. But walk me through this. Like, how'd you come up with this idea? Did you ever expect that it would blow up so much? And what was your reaction? Like, what was your mobile phone like? You're probably draining out batteries because of the notifications that was firing.
Yeah, I literally didn't post on LinkedIn for the next 5 days because I was just busy replying to comments on this, because I figured, like, just put your effort into this. There's no need for any new content. So yeah, back when I was doing daily posts, I remember I was in Austin, Texas on vacation with my family. And just put the kids to sleep, trying to figure out what is my thread going to be of the day, and searching like different big thread writers on X for like topics that they've talked about, right? And so a couple different people, Sahil Bloom and Chung Fan, had written about Sriracha. And I was like, wait, outside of my little X bubble, nobody has heard of Sriracha outside of people who follow Sahil and Chung. And so I started looking into the sources that they looked into. They both looked into and basically were inspired by one Fortune article, which had named him America's first hot sauce billionaire. And so it all really was inspired by Forbes, who picked up this article. But then the three of us, in various phases, noticing, hey, not many people know this story. Interestingly enough, if you posted this post today, it probably wouldn't do very well because way more people know the Sriracha story. But at the time, not many people did. And then if you look at the writing on this post, like, I just nailed it with the research. Each and every paragraph and line is like brand new detail that the Fortune post didn't have, that Sahil or Chung didn't have. Where I went out, I was looking on like the most obscure sources on the web. I probably spent like 2.5 hours like finding all these random details. Like, it's about this surf town, it's from these ingredients, the jalapeno turns this color. And so putting all of those details together, I think, and then finally just choosing a nice picture, made in USA, I think always does well in the USA. And then they're like, oh wait, but that's not a white guy. That's a different guy. So it's an immigrant making in the US. So it just became really exciting for immigrants as well.
Yeah, absolutely. This is amazing. Like, you reading this, it's very easy flowing, very easy to understand. And I think there was also this concept of network effects, because as soon as people saw so many reactions, they wanted to stop and really read what's going on over here. But this was by far insane levels of engagement, and that set a new standard. Probably till date is your biggest post, right, in terms of reactions
on LinkedIn. Yes, I've had much bigger posts on Twitter.
Oh wow, really? Oh, okay, we need to do a separate breakdown for that one day. But yeah, insane. So final question for you, Aakash, because I'd like to sort of understand, you mentioned about the research that you've done behind this. Do you think for content creators today, it's possible to, come up with such content using tools like Perplexity, Gemini, or Claude? And would you, I know people have been encouraging others to use AI as much as possible. Where do you think, or where do you draw the line of usage of content, usage of AI in content creation on LinkedIn and X? And is there a certain balance that you should strike? What does that look like? And if you had AI back in the day, 2021, would things be different?
So this post was written with the help of GPT-4. So at the time, GPT-4 wasn't even available in ChatGPT. GPT-4 was only available on Microsoft Bing search, and you would click chat, and then you would choose GPT-4. And so, I was using the most powerful GPT model out there at the time. Nobody else really even had access to GPT-4. Probably me and like 100 other nerds who figured out that Microsoft was showing it off before it had been released. And so, I think using the cutting edge in AI is always useful. I remember for this one, after I'd written the whole post, I asked GPT-4, generate 10 hooks for this post. You generate 10 more. generate 10 more. The hook that we have here, like the word meet, starting with the word meet, I would have never used that hook on my own if GPT-4 had not suggested it. So nowadays, AI is even really good at research, whether it's Perplexity, or I personally prefer OpenAI Deep Research to Perplexity. But there's other options out there too. I think, for example, what I'm hearing from people is like Gemini 2.5 Pro with search enabled is pretty good and might be the new hotness. So what's the new hotness in terms of research? Who knows? But I would say always use the latest tools. But fundamentally, what made this post succeed, I don't think AI is going to be able to, is not able to research or write at this quality today. Who knows, a year or two from now, maybe it can. But right now, the human touch is still required to like parse out, these are the details that matter, and to do writing that is this tight from a copywriting point of view.
Yeah, makes sense. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing those insights. Sounds good.
All right. So that covers our journey of the post episode in terms of 3 of our favorite posts from each of us. I'll talk a little bit about you now. So Aatir, the creator. First of all, you write a lot of content, and you still do while having a full-time job. How do you balance it, and why do you do that?
Yeah, so I guess I've got 2 lives running in parallel. So from 9 in the morning till 6 p.m., I'm working on my job, and then I have a little break for my family, and then I dedicate about 3 hours in the night, somewhere around 9 till midnight, where I start working on posts and whatnot. And the way I kind of like worked through it is that I don't sit down on an empty screen. I usually have a lot of those ideas already somewhere in my Notion docs, and I'm not always starting from scratch. It's usually middle of the thought where I try to extend and then go and try to complete that thought. So there's already momentum achieved when I sit down to write. But balancing both of them it's been a struggle. Sometimes it becomes really hard because you're so many calls of that you're involved in when you're working, and it could be a very tough day or a long day that you have to work extra hours. And I do take days off. Like I've been a bit more lax in terms of that, and not as disciplined in my content creation cycle. But having said that, sometimes it's just like I haven't posted enough. I don't want to lose the ball. The minimum thing that I would do is pick up a post that has already done well and probably repurpose it and then post it out. But yeah, like sometimes it's just the love for writing that really keeps you going, and you just want to. And there are certain topics out there that you really feel strongly about, that you just want to share your voice around, and that kind of motivates me to keep on going and posting. Yeah.
And you haven't monetized it, if I look at it, right?
Yeah, I haven't monetized it at all. Like, I guess I'm really bad at that aspect. I wanted to, first of all, give free value to a lot of the community members that I have around me. And I know that some of them have been going through some tough times, and they really feel that, they could do well when they have access to such content. And I think a number of the posts that I have or content that I have are actually questions that have been asked to me at community events or on my LinkedIn DMs. And what I just sort of commit to is that let me just write a newsletter post if it's really long, or let me just write it on LinkedIn and then serve that as evergreen content that I can then refer back to whenever somebody asks the same question. But the monetization bit has primarily become because of my own laziness. And I feel that, I just want that freedom right now to balance both my job and the content. But there will come a time where I think that, I might flip the switch. Who knows?
Okay, to be decided. You have amazing visuals. Can you take us behind the scenes a little bit? Maybe we can create a visual together.
So I build all my graphics on Canva. So that's the cat out of the bag. It's not a secret as such. Like that's the most common question that I get about my visuals. Like, how do you design it and what tool you use? So Canva is the tool. And if you look at my projects, I've got like tons of them over here. When I go into PM content, about 140 of these. So these are all the visuals that I've been creating over time.
Do you now for premium?
Yeah, I pay for premium. Absolutely. Because I guess I can't do it without a lot of the presets that they have and the the library of visuals and icons to have. I need those. So absolutely worth it. Given that you're a content creator, I think it's something that one should always pay for. The the prerequisite that I had, and when I started out, and if I was to scroll down, when I started out, I didn't have really a brand template. I would just pick out a new template every time. So there was a point when I used to do the dark navy blue scheme, and then here are some of the other posts which don't have any kind of branding. But then eventually what I did was, the first thing that I created a brand template. And when I created a brand template, now whenever I start a post, I just basically extend out of this because it already has my footer, it has my scheme. I also have my branding kit over here with brand templates and all my fonts and the kind of visuals that I typically use. And then I extend from those. And sometimes I just duplicate something that if I know that I'm going to be doing a table, so I don't have to do it over and over again, I'll just go into my Canva and say, hey, this is good enough. Let me just duplicate this and then use the same thing. So interestingly, I also have a version of your why, what, who, where, but it's kind of like a divider between product management and product marketing. So that's where I start from. I already have brand template. I've already done, taken care of the variables in terms of what the font will look like, what will some of the color scheme look like, because all of that is settled. So it kind of saves me time. And then I just go back to the visuals that I've already done and then decide like what format that I'm going to be using and go from there. Now, if I was to just create something right now, let me just go through the post that I just recently created, right? So how do I basically create my post now? I obviously have to come up with a central graphic, and that's usually the face of the graphic itself or the carousel. So in this case, when I thought about the trio, I knew I needed to merge them together to break the silo effect. So if the way I was creating that was, I was just using the circle function on Canva, and then duplicating that, and then duplicating that again. And then just basically coloring them out with my branding colors, whether that's this and that, and that's it. And then I would just like merge them together, and then I would give them some kind of border weight so that all of them have some kind of a border, and then go from there. And then I could, just reduce the transparency to give them that effect of being superimposed in each other. And then go from there, basically, and keep on just putting on labels. So over here, I'd use this label. I would just typically have this in any other graphic of mine, and then I would fill out the labels based on what I really care about. And then I would put in a text block, and I would say, hey, this is a product manager, and so on and so forth. And then I would just basically change this over here and play with the spacing a bit as required. And tinker down with it as I would need to.
Yep. Your posts are like half text and half art because you're doing a lot of design here.
Yeah, absolutely. So it all comes back to how I come up with my posts. So every creator has their own model, has their own workflow. So my workflow is, let me just show you. Let's just bring up my Notion board. So here is basically the command center of my content creation. Now, you may not understand a lot of these things, what I'm talking about. But what happens is that the way I write content is that I think about the punchline first. I have to figure out what that punchline would be. And that typically becomes the hook line. Obviously, I'll probably play around with it and try to tinker with it a bit, but I need to know what that punchline will be, and then I'll go from there. So for example, when I look at, this is a post that I'm about to write. This has not been published yet, but the punchline is that I want to change what the meaning of shipping means. Today, shipping is a lot about product delivery of features, but I believe shipping should actually be adoption, right? Once you've actually delivered a feature, then how do you get it and get customers to adopt it? So here you can see, like, I would have just jotted down like random thoughts, and I might have come up with something from DeepSeek or Perplexity, etc. And what happens is when I start writing the post, as you can see, I'm not starting from scratch. I'm already halfway there kind of. And this is kind of built out throughout the week. So would be adding material into this post, like maybe a couple of snippets here and there throughout the week till I get to a point where I'm going to sit down and really talk about it in depth. So the first thing is the punchline. And I'm a kind of a visual creator. The second thing I do is actually create the visual. So I would actually do the visual first because it just allows me to visualize and create a story around it. And then I do the content part, which is the text part. And that just makes it easier for me. So once I've done the visual and have all these different elements in place, you can imagine writing a content post around this becomes kind of trivial because, now I can just pick and choose. In fact, I could upload this PDF document into Notebook LM and it would kind of just summarize some of the things that I should be talking about. So, visuals are super important for me. Like I kind of think that's a great way to learn product.
Yeah, and when I see your visual identity, it's just like you've been so consistent with it over years. So as soon as I see a post like that, I know there's you.
Yeah, that was something that I picked up from some of the LinkedIn experts, and I feel that if you look at even Fletch PMM and what Anthony and Robert are doing right now, they've got such a beautiful visual scheme. And again, you could look at that artifact from a mile away, but that's quintessential Fletch. And that's the kind of inspiration I had also, that I needed to create constructs. It saves time because you don't have to think about what looks good, what's not, because it's just you. And once you've selected your color theme and your fonts and whatnot, you can just really get into creating content and not wasting time on anything else. So a lot of the things that you currently see are just based on that. Yeah.
Amazing. Last question here.
Sure.
If you could go back to the day you first started your first product management job and give yourself some advice, what would it be?
Yeah. I think some of the advice would be what we just talked about, would be that don't be siloed in your role. Talk to the people outside the product or design and engineering team as well. And specifically the salespeople, the executive leadership, marketing, customer success. I feel that when I started doing PM, I was so bogged down by making sure that I was doing releases, writing the PRDs, working with designers, engineers. And I think that's still an important part of the job. I'm not diminishing that. But I felt that I missed out on a lot of the business value simply because I didn't understand the concepts that sales or executive leadership used to think or care about. And that's why when I used to go into strategy meetings, I would just be a spectator as opposed to a contributor. So I would say that back in the day, if I was to go back into myself, I would actually make a conscious effort to learn the languages of different cross-functional stakeholders, and then just interact with them a lot more. Just sit down with them, ask, what do you care? What are your goals in the organization? And how does product tie into that? What do you not understand about the product and how can it help you? And what are your workflows and processes? And just teach me a lot more about that. For example, one that has really changed me as a product manager, and that was also the catalyst which drove me into product marketing and eventually marketing, was the CRM. Once I started getting access to the CRM and I started looking at conversations, as I started listening to call recordings and the way sales were conversing with customers, talking about different aspects of the product, and then also looking at why customers were opting out or not choosing to go with the product and those objections, it just made me so much more informed about why the product will thrive or not, or whether the bets that I'm currently taking are going to be relevant or not. And that just kind of was living in silos, and whether that was in Gong or whether that in the HubSpot CRM. And had I, understood where this information lived, years ago, I think I would have just made a lot more better informed decisions. So advice number one, get out of your shell, talk to more people.
Definitely resonates with what we talked about today. And I think also resonates with some of the 6 content pieces we looked at, right? We looked at things like, what does the new trio look like? You need to collaborate with product marketing and growth as a PM. We looked at the various languages you need to speak, whether it's salesian or marketing or corporate-ish, right? We talked about the growth loops you want to be creating. And then over on my side, we looked at some content that was really focused on product strategy, which I think would be my reflection and takeaway for a young PM is, do you understand this product strategy layer? We looked at the product strategy of Netflix. We looked at where product strategy fits in terms of the why in the overall thing you need to do as a PM. And then we looked at the product strategy of Sriracha, right? And all of these examples, I think that PMs, it pays for them to not just think about their job, but to think about the job of the people around them, to think about how would I do that well, think about the people of the job above them and how I would do that well. That to me is like a enduring takeaway to becoming a better product manager.
100%. I think that just kind of sums it up. And in fact, like when we talk about product management, I think the old version of product management really focuses on building the product right. But the second part of that phrase is in a manner that works for the business. It's not just building anything. It's not a charity business. So unless you unless you understand the business and what drives it and what the unit economics are and who are the stakeholders that are responsible for it, you can't do strategy. You can't really make a product that's going to be compelling enough for the stakeholders to buy into and for customers to really get behind. So that's, I guess it summarizes the whole thing, that you need to know the entire mission plan for a product manager and go and talk to the right people behind that.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm glad we could finally make this happen.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for having me, Aakash. This was amazing. Thanks.
I really hope you guys enjoyed that episode. It would mean a ton to me and the team if you could please subscribe on YouTube, follow on Apple and Spotify podcasts, and leave a rating and review. Those ratings and reviews really help grow the show and help other people discover the show. And they help fund the production so that we can do bigger and better productions. Can't wait to share the next episode with you. Until then, see you later.